Woods.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. The first call I take on this bill, and like many of my colleagues have spoken about, it's actually with regret that Labor cannot support this bill. We are supporting this part 2 of the bill, and I'd like to genuinely thank the Minister for taking a call and answering some of the questions that were put to him in the House here tonight. And actually, in your answers, Minister, there were actually many other questions that came from those, and I would welcome you to take a call and to answer some further questions that arose from the information you gave us here in the House tonight. That you talked about the farm and when it was deemed to be a workplace, and around the recreational use exemption, so that a farm was only a workplace when it was being a workplace, when people were performing work there and not for recreational use. And you talked about particularly mountain biking and quad biking on these spaces. But Minister, this opens some very serious questions that we need some clarification on. For example, if someone is riding a quad bike back to a farmhouse to take a smoko break, are they deemed to be at work? Are they covered by the Act? If they are riding a quad bike in the purposes of some after work drinks on a Friday, the workers knock off and decide to have some drinks, and people are riding around on quad bikes, is that deemed to be a workplace, and that they will then be covered by the Act? And these are things that one of the issues that we have around the number of exemptions that are being put into place, and the dancing on a head of a pin around when a workplace is a workplace and whether health and safety should apply, opening up questions. So they were genuine questions, and I would genuinely like an answer to them. I also have some questions to the Minister around when it is that accommodation is deemed to be a workplace, and the test the Minister outlined is when there is a choice that the employee can make about whether or not they live in that accommodation, or whether there is alternative accommodation that they can take up. So I'd like the Minister to clarify that if that accommodation is included as part of a remuneration package, whether or not that is deemed to be a choice that an employee can make. I'd also like the Minister to clarify if there are no reasonable or affordable alternatives, whether there may well be alternatives, but they may not be deemed to be reasonably affordable, whether there is deemed to be choice for the worker in that instance, and whether this legislation would apply to them. Because, Mr. Chairman, this comes back to some of the fundamental problems that we have with this bill. While we're supporting part 2, our problem, as many of my colleagues have outlined, is the way in which this interacts with other parts of the legislation. That we have these PCBUs, or as my colleague Calvin Davis renamed the acronym, the BOSSs, that are deemed to make these decisions, but we have all these exemptions. And the problem that we have here, Mr. Chairman, is that there is no onus for there to be health and safety reps. How is it that this part we are supporting, part 2, how is it going to be policed? And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to turn my attention to subpart 4 of part 2, the duties to preserve sites and notify notable events, and specifically clauses 51 through 53 that are contained in this subpart of the bill, because these are very important provisions within this bill. It is absolutely critical that when accidents, no matter how small, or incidents, not even accidents but incidents, happen in a workplace, that there is notification, that these are recorded, and that there is a record of these. And I note that this part of the bill has all the great intentions around doing that, and I support that and I welcome that. But my concern is that in businesses where there isn't deemed to be the need to have workplace health and safety reps, that we're not going to have any ability to police that. I've heard members of the government interject, not take a call, but interject that WorkSafe will do this. Well, I'd also like the Minister to tell us if that is his realistic expectation, that WorkSafe will be everywhere in these businesses who are exempt from the legislation, ensuring that they are being policed, and will be omnipresent to know whether that is occurring. Because, Mr. Chairman,
I call Chris Farr for